Hello, Cobbs Corner family, and welcome to another episode of Cobbs Corner, your one-stop shop for all things TV, film, and pop culture. If this is your first time listening, then welcome, and to my returning listeners, welcome back to Cobbs Corner. This is the 98th episode of Cobbs Corner. Again, we are so close to 100 episodes, I can almost taste it. And so, thank you for listening and sharing this broadcast, and thank you to my longtime listeners who have been rocking with me from day one. We are so close to 100 episodes. All right, so thank you for listening to and sharing this broadcast. In today's episode, the AFI series will be taking us from Phoenix, Arizona to the Bates Motel with number 14, Psycho. Stay tuned.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
So this movie came out in the year 1960, and this movie was actually a part of my introduction to Alfred Hitchcock way back in high school. I do want to just real quick give him his flowers. Mr. Maroney, who was my teacher for Intro to Film Studies back in high school, he had us watch Rear Window, which is also on the AFI Top 100. I am going to do that movie in a future episode. We watched Rear Window, watched and analyzed Rear Window with, I think James Stewart is in that movie, and we watched just the iconic shower scene. The shower scene from this movie, which is super iconic. I mean, I think it's been parodied a few times. I'm sure, I know it's been parodied in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory remake, which is actually really not that good of a movie, but there's that parody of the shower scene. It's such an iconic scene. I know the music from the shower scene was used in Daddy Daycare, so he had us analyze just that scene out of context. So here I am now, what's this, 8 years later, here I am 8 years later, finally watching the full movie from start to finish, which is exactly how Alfred Hitchcock wanted everybody to watch the movie. This was an interesting bit of interesting demand from the director and the way the movie was advertised. This movie came out in 1960, pre-internet, pre-social media, pre-cell phones, and the way that the movie was marketed by the director Alfred Hitchcock, he said that the movie should be watched start to finish. And for people seeing the movie in theaters back in 1960, if any of you who are listening, maybe if you yourself saw this movie in theaters back in 1960, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments down below. If any of you maybe have parents or grandparents who saw this movie in the 1960s, let me know. And the policy was that everyone had to show up to the theater right at the start. Once the movie started, nobody was allowed into the theater. After the movie started, nobody could come in halfway through or a quarter of the way through. Like, once the opening credits started, the doors were closed, nobody's allowed in. Alfred Hitchcock, he demanded that the movie be watched from beginning to end. I think one of the advertisements has said, this movie, I think at the movie theaters there was like a cardboard cutout of Alfred Hitchcock saying, like, this movie must be watched from beginning to end. We will not let anybody in this theater halfway through, not the President of the United States, not the Pope, not the Queen of England, and then in parentheses, God bless her, because Sir Alfred Hitchcock, Sir Alfred Hitchcock, again, shout out to my listeners across the pond in the United Kingdom. And yeah, he demanded that this movie be watched from start to finish. He even took some of the earnings. Paramount Pictures allowed him to take some of the movie's potential earnings and use that as, I think, like merchandising. Like, it was something similar happened with 20th Century Fox and George Lucas in the 70s. Like, 20th Century Fox had such little faith in Star Wars. They said, all right, fine, you want to take some of the movie's potential earnings and like put that towards merchandising. Go right ahead. Put that towards merchandising, advertising. Go right ahead. Paramount Pictures said the same thing about Psycho because they had such little faith in this movie. This movie was made a bit later in Alfred Hitchcock's career. I realize this is the second Hitchcock movie that I've done on the podcast. So far, I've already done North by Northwest on the podcast. That was a previous episode I did last year. I forget the exact number. It's in the 90s. Like it was an episode that I did like it's in the 90 episodes that I did with Bob Lament from Static Radio podcast. Big shout out to Bob Lament and Static Radio. Salute. I can't wait to have you and possibly even your co-host back on the podcast. We're going to be doing the Hitchcock trifecta. We are doing Rear Window and Vertigo. We already did North by Northwest. It's still to come. We've got Rear Window and Vertigo. So and then also Psycho. So Alfred Hitchcock, he is on the AFI Top 100 4 times. I'm not sure if there's any other director who is on this list more than him, but I know Hitchcock is on here 4 times. So yeah, this movie definitely revolutionized the horror genre, and it was intense for viewers at that time. I mean, I know I'm going to get into my favorite parts later on in the next segment, but from the iconic shower scene to the music to the fact that Hitchcock even claimed that 33%, 1/3 of the experience of watching this film is the music. And we'll hear more about that in the trivia. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but this movie definitely did a lot for the horror genre and for Alfred Hitchcock as a director. I think this is probably maybe I don't know if it's his most well-known film, but it's definitely up there. It's definitely on like for me personally, it's on my Mount Rushmore of Hitchcock films. This one got to put North by Northwest up there. Maybe even Rear Window. And I'm not saying that just because those are films on the AFI Top 100, but I'm wondering, would that work today? Like what if the director of what if James Gunn, because I know the Superman movie's coming out soon. Like what if James Gunn had put out a statement saying that nobody is allowed to talk about the ending of Superman, and that nobody is allowed to be admitted to the theater after the movie starts. I feel like that worked back in 1960 because, again, there's no internet. We don't have cell phones. We don't have Instagram. So I think it worked back then. And even even Alfred Hitchcock was very adamant about nobody should be talking about the ending. Nobody should be talking about the movie after it's done. Everyone should watch it from start to finish. You cannot come in halfway through. It's kind of similar to, I think, it reminded me of, if any of you remember, back in 2018 when Avengers Infinity War came out, I think it was Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige. He put out a statement with the hashtag Thanos demands your silence. And it was just a reminder to the fans to please don't spoil the ending of Avengers Infinity War. And, if you've seen it, you've seen it. I mean, if you haven't, I've already done an episode on Avengers Infinity War. If you haven't seen it by now, please go watch it and listen to my review. Also, same goes for Psycho. I'm getting into full spoiler detail. I feel like I shouldn't really need to say that. I mean, that's the case with all my episodes. But yeah, this movie, if you have not seen this movie, exit this episode right now. Go watch it and then come back. All right? That's how just iconic and just chilling this movie is. Maybe don't watch it alone. Maybe watch it with the lights on. Don't do what I did. But yeah, that's what we're getting into today. Psycho. Oh, one last bit of context and I guess fun facts for Psycho. Alfred Hitchcock, he released a trailer for Psycho where he didn't show any scenes from the movie. The entire trailer was literally just, and I'm pretty sure you can find the original trailer on YouTube. The entire trailer was just him at that lot where they filmed the scenes that took place at the motel and then the house. He's just sitting at that lot. He's just standing at that lot, and he gives us a walkthrough, like a tour of the house. He alludes to some things that happen in the movie. He even like brings us into the bathroom, and then once he opens the curtain, then it transitions to the movie title, Psycho. Like, see it in theaters, and so I'm wondering, would that work today? What if, like, for Avengers Secret Wars, we get like the first trailer has no footage of the movie. We just see the director or directors, and they're just like going through like one of the settings, like one of the sets that they use on the film. Like, I wonder, would that fly today? You know, I feel like this movie might be a little time period specific in terms of its promotion, but it is without a doubt a classic. Here we are 65 years later, and we're still talking about it. That shower scene, it still hits the same. So that's what we'll be getting into today with number 14, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. So, introduction. A secretary on the run for embezzlement takes refuge at a secluded California motel owned by a repressed man and his overbearing mother. Storyline. Phoenix office worker Marion Crane is fed up with the way life has treated her. She has to meet her lover Sam in lunch breaks, and they cannot get married because Sam has to give most of his money away in alimony. One Friday, Marion is trusted to bank $40,000 by her employer. Seeing the opportunity to take the money and start a new life, Marion leaves town and heads towards Sam's California store. Tired after the long drive and caught in a storm, she gets off the main highway and pulls into the Bates Motel. The motel is managed by a quiet young man called Norman, who seems to be dominated by his mother. The storyline is provided to us from Cole Needham via IMDb. The movie is directed by the aforementioned Academy Award nominated director, Alfred Hitchcock. He's known for directing Vertigo, 1958, which is number 9 on the AFI Top 100. Look for that in a future episode. North by Northwest, which came out in 1959, which is number 55 on the AFI Top 100, which I reviewed on episode 92. It was episode 92 that I did with Bob Lament from Static Radio, so go listen to that episode once you're done with this episode. And he also directed 1963's The Birds, which unfortunately did not make the cut. The movie's written by Joseph Stefano and Robert Bloch. Joseph Stefano is known for his work on the TV series The Outer Limits, which aired from 1963 to 1964. He wrote 12 episodes of that series. He wrote one episode of Star Trek The Next Generation back in 1988. And he was a writer on the 1998 Psycho remake with, if I'm not mistaken, I think Vince Vaughn is in that movie. And I heard it was awful. I heard it's like almost a shot-for-shot remake. But yes, Joseph Stefano, he worked on both the original Psycho, 1960, and then Psycho the remake in 1998. Again, maybe I'll do an original versus remake series later on. Like I said with my last episode, the Wizard of Oz, I might do like Wizard of Oz versus The Wiz. Maybe I'll do Psycho versus Psycho. When I get to Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, I'm probably going to make that a 2-part episode. It's probably going to be Snow White and the Seven Dwarves from like 1930. I think it came out in 1937, around that time. Snow White and the Seven Dwarves versus Snow White 2025. And that'll be a 2-part episode. So let me know, should I keep that train going? Should I do an original versus remake series? Let me know in the comments down below. Robert Bloch is known for his work on the TV series Journey to the Unknown. He worked on 2 episodes of that show back in 1968. He was a writer on Psycho 2 in 1983, and he was also one of the writers on the Psycho remake in 1998. The movie stars Academy Award nominated actor Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates. He's known for playing Chaplain Tapman in Catch-22 back in 1970, Norman Bates in Psycho 2, 1983, and he would reprise his role a third time as Norman Bates in Psycho 3 back in 1986. Academy Award nominated actress Janet Leigh stars as Marion Crane. She's known for playing Susan Vargas in Touch of Evil, 1958. Eugene Rose Chaney in The Manchurian Candidate, 1962. And Kathy Williams in The Fog, 1980. Lastly, the movie stars Vera Miles as Lila Crane. She's known for playing Laurie Jorgensen in The Searchers, 1956, which is number 12 on the AFI Top 100, so look for that in a future episode. Rose Balistrero in The Wrong Man, 1956, and Haley Stoddard in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance in 1962. Without any further ado, let's go to Cobbs Corner. So the movie opens with some opening credits. The movie has opening credits where we hear the iconic Psycho theme song, just the dun 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 dun. Like, I keep trying to pinpoint where have I heard the Psycho theme song before. Again, this is how old the movie is. The movie has all the credits at the beginning of the film, and there's no credits at the end. Like I've talked in the past about movies like Star Wars and Citizen Kane that were controversial at the time for putting all their credits at the end of the film, but this movie has all of them at the beginning. And then it opens on the skyline of Phoenix, Arizona, and we meet Marion Crane, who's played by Janet Leigh. She's in bed with her boyfriend Sam Loomis, played by John Gavin, and Sam Loomis, who is divorced, and the two of them, they have been having I don't know if this is entirely appropriate. I know I try to keep things family friendly on Cobbs Corner, but I guess the modern day term would be a sneaky link, or seeing each other on the DL, I guess, if that's maybe more PG. I don't know. So they've been essentially seeing each other in secret, and Sam says how he owes alimony to his ex-wife, and Marion is single. She's not married. She wants to get married, but due to her current situation, due to the way things are going with her job and just in her life, she doesn't see marriage as a possibility for them. And it's my understanding that, I guess, adultery or fornication, like even back in 1960, that was very unheard of. It was very frowned upon. Two people sleeping in the same bed who are unmarried. I mean, even this going. I mean, back in the 1950s, there was the show I Love Lucy, and I think I've talked about this on this podcast before about how on I Love Lucy, Lucy and her husband Ricardo were sleeping in two different beds. Husband and wife sleeping in two separate beds. So that's how conservative and just very there's a lot that wasn't allowed at that time. So I think already Psycho, right off the bat, is Alfred Hitchcock is taking a risk. And then the movie continues following Marion. And Marion, she works in a real estate business. She's either a secretary or an assistant at a real estate firm. And her boss comes in and gives her $40,000. She's been trusted with $40,000. It's a Friday afternoon. She's been trusted with depositing this $40,000 in the bank. And she then sees this $40,000 as freedom, essentially. So instead of taking it to the bank, or she agrees to take it to the bank the following Monday, because Saturday and Sunday, those are not business days. She essentially lies to her boss, says she's going to take it to the bank, but then in reality what she does is she drives over to driving over to California, and you're driving over to California because she sees these $40,000 as an opportunity for her and Sam to get married, for him to settle whatever debt he has with his ex-wife, whatever alimony payments that he has to make, and the two of them can, with that $40,000, start a new life together. So she's driving out west, and we even get this one scene where her car just goes off to the side of the road, and she's kind of asleep because she falls asleep, and then she's sort of parked on the side of the road. A police officer comes over to her and tells her to wake up, and there's plenty of motels in this area, and she doesn't get in trouble with the law or anything. She gets up, keeps driving, and then even at the car dealership, she very quickly pays $7,000 cash. I don't have my inflation calculator in front of me, but $7,000 cash for a brand new car, and drives off the lot that day, right then and there. So then she continues her trek out to California, out to meet Sam, who works in California. And she ends up pulling into a motel, which is called the Bates Motel. Bates Motel, which is run by Norman Bates. Norman Bates, who is played by Anthony Perkins, who I feel like was perfectly cast. And she shows up that night. It's raining. She has to beep her horn, and then she sees Anthony coming down from the house. Because there's a house on the property as well, and Norman comes down from the house and goes into the office. Brings Marion inside and assigns her to cabin number 1. So they have 12 cabins, 12 vacancies, and brings her to the first cabin, and then the two of them end up having dinner together, and we realize that Norman Bates, he is very conversational. He doesn't seem like someone who is disturbed or emotionally abused or physically abused, and he tells Marion this really sad story about his mom, and how his mom really has never been the same after his father died. His father died when he was about 5, and so his mom had to raise him on her own, and that's why he, as a grown man, he looks like he might have been late 20s, early 30s, why he still lives with his mom and is still running that motel, and he hasn't ventured off and lived life on his own. And he's picked up the odd hobby of taxidermy, which is essentially stuffing dead animals for the uninitiated, and initially Marion, she does not suspect anything of this Norman Bates fellow. He seems like a decent guy, and so the two of them, they have dinner. Marion goes back to her room, and as she's in her room, unbeknownst to her, there is a secret, peephole in the wall that's covered by a picture. That's covered by a picture in the parlor where they were having dinner. So Norman Bates, he removes the picture, and then he's able to look right into Marion's room, and he sees her getting undressed. She's getting ready to take a shower. And before that, she, I think, writes down some figures. She does $40,000 minus $7,000, and she actually has a change of heart and decides to, instead of running off with Sam, she decides, I'm actually going to take this $40,000. She hides it in like a newspaper, and she decides, I'm actually going to go and deposit this like I said I would. And she tears up those figures, drops them in the toilet. My high school film class teacher, he said that the shower scene in Psycho was controversial because apparently, now film scholars, feel free to fact check me in the comments below. Apparently, the shower scene was the very first time that we saw a toilet on screen. It was the very first time that a toilet was shown, so I guess that was controversial at the time. And also nudity. Nudity was not really commonplace in Hollywood at that time either, although we only see Marion showering from the shoulders up. And so she gets in the shower. We see she's, we see her from the, shoulders up or from the chest up. And she's taking a shower, washing herself. All we hear is the sound of the shower water, the water coming out of the shower head. That's all we hear. And then she does not see the serial killer walk in. We actually don't see the serial killer's face. And then that iconic music starts. The killer's got the knife up. Opens the shower curtain. That iconic music starts. I'm sure we've all heard it. And then just, boom, stabbing away, and then just at the dun 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 dun. No, I can't actually play it on air because copyright. But if you know, you know. And then we see the water running into the drain. See, that mixed with like water and also some blood running into the drain, and that transitions into Marion's eye because she is now dead, and the shower curtain is pulled down, and we still don't know who killed Marion. And whoever it is that killed Marion, I'm not going to reveal who it was, rolls her body up, puts her body in the trunk of the car, in the trunk of Marion's car, and then puts that along with the newspaper that had the $40,000 or $33,000, the $33,000 inside of it. Puts that in the trunk of the car, drives the car over to a swamp. I guess puts the car in neutral, and then pushes the car into the swamp, and then the car sinks to the bottom of the swamp. Monday morning rolls around. Marion's not at work. So then her sister, Leigh Crane, who's played by Vera Miles, she meets up with Sam, and although it's not explicitly stated, but I guess you could say infidelity, quote unquote, is implied, that maybe Lila and Sam had an affair unbeknownst to the now deceased Marion, and they start to get concerned. They consult detective I think Milton Arbogast, and the detective then ends up driving down to the Bates Motel. He ends up finding the Bates Motel, and again, this is all pre-internet. They definitely would have found Marion like quicker. They would have found her like that same day. They definitely would have found her that same day if this were set in the 21st century. He ends up going to the Bates Motel and ends up going inside of the house. He goes inside of the house, and there's 3 levels to the house, and this is where the movie gets a little bit psychological, like how there's 3 levels of the mind. There's the top level, which is like the super ego, and if I'm not mistaken, the middle is the ego, and then the lowest part is the id, the unknown id. Again, psychology majors, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. He makes his way into the house, and he ends up actually getting killed by Norman Bates, which is a bit of a subversion of the audience's expectations. We would have thought that the detective was the good guy, that he was going to solve the murder, that he was going to save the day. That doesn't happen. So the detective, he ends up getting murdered, and we actually never see Norman Bates' mother. Like, all we do is we hear her voice, but we never actually see her. You know. So, we never actually see Norman Bates' mother, but it's clear that this man is disturbed and is having, and is essentially killing anyone who shows up to his motel, and he's never, and of course the fact that he never left his mother's side. So yeah, any attractive young women show up to the motel, of course she's gonna be jealous. So that was one of the prevailing theories about who had killed Marion. Eventually, Lila and Sam end up making their way over to the motel, and Sam actually goes into the lower floor, which represents, like I said, the id. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, so I'm not overly familiar with like the levels of like the human psyche and the human subconscious. But he ends up he sees a figure sitting down, staring at the wall. He turns that figure around, come to find out that it's just a skull, that it is the corpse of Bates's mother. And then no, I think it's actually Lila. Lila finds the corpse, but then Sam is the one who stops Norman from killing Lila. Then Sam runs in, dressed as his mother. He's wearing a wig. He's got his knife raised, but then Sam is the unlikely hero who actually saves Lila and calls the police. They end up locking him up. And the end of the movie, it sort of kind of falls flat a little bit because, again, this movie came out in the year 1960, and there was perhaps a lot of people who maybe didn't fully grasp like the symbolism of the movie and the reason why Norman Bates became a secluded like serial killer. So there's a whole scene where they're at the police station and they explain like essentially like why Norman Bates had become this disturbed and was running a motel, and he was dressing as a woman, and they even name dropped transvestitism. So everything's explained, but that's really I think Hitchcock was doing that for the audience, and he kind of had to do that at that time. There was really no room for like implicit sort of like having an implicit understanding of like, yes, this person probably has two people living inside one mind, talking about like things like schizophrenia or multiple personalities disorder, like having a whole nother person living within him. He had his mother living within him, and that's why he would put on the wigs and end up killing his guests. So there's that scene at the end where they finally explain everything, and the movie ends with an iconic shot of Norman Bates smiling, and then we cut to the car being pulled out of the swamp, and then we just see the end. Like I said, there are no end credits. There are no credits at the end of this movie. So I mean, movie's less than 2 hours. It's a quick watch. I guess we also have to be mindful of the time period. So no, it's not the most exciting film ever, and yes, it is kind of a slow pace movie that maybe you got to think a little bit about. But overall, I think this movie is a must watch. I definitely think it deals with sort of the themes of like the human psyche and the human subconscious, and like what we desire as humans, and what people and what Americans in particular had desired at that time. Like, did we desire sex? Did we desire death? Did we desire money? Money and new lives. So that's one of the themes. But then also the theme of freedom, I guess. Like for Marion, being able to have that $40,000 and essentially taking it and running with it, and planning to start a new life with her boyfriend Sam. And then how a lot of times, those plans for freedom, they just don't end up going the way that we want them to go. The movie also deals with themes of course, duality, having that duality of man, that sort of like Jekyll and Hyde, and like there's who we are to the public. Like, I think the Japanese have a saying that you have 3 faces. We all have 3 faces. There's one face you show the world. There's another face you show just your inner circle of close friends, family, your spouses, friends, family, your spouse, your kids. But there's that third face that you don't show anybody. That third face that you keep to yourself. That's the realest and rawest form of yourself. The realest, most authentic version of yourself. Of course, the duality of human nature, contrasting our public and our private lives, and who you are at home versus who you are at work. And there's, in the case of Norman Bates, there's that hidden darkness, there's that hidden, charming exterior while harboring a very violent, very fractured personality. Very very violent, very disturbed personality. Isolation and loneliness. I mean, I feel like this is maybe right on the money for today. I've been told that there is a huge loneliness epidemic, particularly with my generation, particularly with Gen Z, particularly our young men. As young men who are part of Gen Z, there's a huge loneliness epidemic. Many of us, like, we're the generation that's most connected, but also the most disconnected at the same time. Being able to go outside and touch grass, as the kids say today, being able to touch grass, being able to forge real, authentic relationships with people. I feel like that is our calling. This is, I guess, a bit of the Christian in me talking, but I believe that God gives, God's purpose is for us to be in community, and for us to not be in isolation. He wants us to be in community. He wants us to learn together and grow together, and be together, and no, none of us are perfect. We all have things to sort out. We are all sinners. We all sin, myself included. No human being, none of us have lived sinless lives. And we all have trauma and things that we're going through in our own personal lives, but it's being able to talk to someone, whether that be through therapy or just like friends and family, just being able to pick up the phone and just kind of have a conversation about like what's going on, because we get it, life is hard. And in the case of Norman Bates, he had undealt with childhood trauma, first losing his father when he was 5, and then losing his mother, but then unable to deal with that loss, unable to grieve, unable to accept it and not move on per se, but not internalize that loss and create a reality in which his mother is still alive. He couldn't deal with that loss, and he was so lonely and so reclusive. He didn't have anyone else to talk to, and I think maybe that's a bit of like a catch-22, because at that time, again, there's no internet. Baby boomers, Gen Xers, maybe even millennials to an extent, Generation Y, they were required to go outside. They were required to leave their house, to leave their neighborhoods, and to go and forge real relationships and forge real and authentic bonds with people, and with people and with different places, because a lot of times that's how you would get hired, that's how you would get to go to school, was through building those connections. But they had that inconvenience, so they were forced to leave their house, forced to go and build those connections. And my whole life I was told by my parents, like, oh, you kids have it easy today, you got all this technology. And like, to an extent, my parents were right. We have we have all of the technology that they didn't have, and at the time they didn't know what they were missing, because none of us can see 40 years into the future. So they didn't know that they were missing the internet and smartphones and social media. Like, we're so connected, but like, it's just the constant, like, the scrolling through Instagram, like the constant time spent online has in a way caused us to be more disconnected from people. Everything's got to be electronic, and I think COVID-19 definitely did a number on what was already happening. That distance between people, people not forging real relationships, not going outside and actually interacting with the world around them. And then COVID-19, all of us were forced to stay home. So I mean, now that we're post-pandemic, I take every opportunity to touch grass, especially around this time of the year. I'm recording this episode in the summertime. It is now summer of 2025, and I'm from New England, where we get warm weather maybe like 3 months out of the year, maybe June, July, August, maybe September-ish, but then like usually around Labor Day weekend, that's when Mother Nature just checks out. So while we've got this warm weather, I'm taking advantage. I'm going outside, go to the beach, get out of the house, guys. Get out of the house. I mean, the irony is that I'm doing a podcast episode about this, but get out of the house and be able to put the technology down. You only get one life. Don't waste it on social media. You only get one childhood. Don't waste it on social media. This virtual reality, it's virtual. It's not real. The internet, it's not the real world. It's great and all. I love the internet. I love social media. I love having this platform where I get to, talk to all of you and analyze these great films. And that's all good. That's got its place. But recognize that the real world is out there. Real connections happen offline. The real growth, the real change happens off mic, offline. Be able to actually go out and live your life. Don't just sit at home and live your boring, mundane life. Don't just sit at home and pretend like your life is perfect. Don't pretend like you've got it all figured out on your own. None of us do, myself included. None of us have this thing called life totally figure it out on our own. Okay, it's just like the Village People said in their song YMCA, no man does it all by himself. Young man, put your pride on the shelf. All right, and I already talked about, ego. But yeah, the isolation and loneliness, it's a very, very, very isolated setting. It almost kind of reminded me of Get Out. The Bates Motel kind of reminded me of Get Out. It's like you're kind of isolated. The nearest house is like a couple miles away. The police are miles away. Cell phone, landline phones. You make a call to somebody, they're not coming out there for like an hour. Very secluded. That's the very, very, very isolated, very secluded setting of the Bates Motel. Norman's reclusive life definitely contributes to that theme of isolation. The isolation, which is again coupled with Bates's internal struggles. Definitely throughout the film create that sense of unease and dread. Voyeurism and surveillance. I feel like surveillance is a recurring theme, at least in every Hitchcock film that I've seen. Rear Window for sure, and it's ironic that the theme of surveillance has come up, because that was actually the recurring theme in Intro to Film Studies. All the movies we watched had to deal with surveillance. We watched The Conversation by Francis Ford Coppola, Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock, Eagle Eye with Shia LaBeouf. I'm not sure who directs that. Then we watched Citizen 4, the documentary Citizen 4. We watched the Oliver Stone movie Snowden. We watched Her with Joaquin Phoenix. And I think the last movie we watched was Ex Machina. So all those movies have to do with surveillance and yeah. But yeah, all those movies have to do with surveillance. And yeah, I guess to an extent, also North by Northwest has to do a bit with surveillance. And this one is as well. Of course, drawing us, the audience, into the action and giving us a lot of these like POV shots. We get like these POV shots of Marion when she's driving, and she will hear the voice of her boss in the back in her head. We get that last POV shot of Norman Bates, and of course, making us, the audience, we are complicit in just observing these characters. And the shower scene, of course, we are living vicariously through these characters, but just making it giving it that sense of surveillance, that sense of like, we are here to observe only. Of course, mental health is 100% important. I brought this up in the last episode. Mental health, if you need to talk to someone, that is 100% important. But yes, this movie definitely hits on all those themes. The duality of man, voyeurism and surveillance, and of course the dangers of isolation. This movie was perhaps a bit of a cautionary tale about the dangers of isolation, dangers of loneliness. Be able to touch grass, be able to get out of the house. Humans, we are social creatures. We crave social interaction. All right, we cannot live on our own, because then that's how you get out of touch with reality. And it breaks my heart when I hear about celebrities like Wendy Williams and Bruce Willis, suffering from brain diseases and dementia and Alzheimer's at younger ages. And I've talked about this in previous episodes. Health and wellness is important, because I feel like, and I'm no doctor, I'm not licensed to give any sort of medical advice. Just let the record show I am not at all authorized to give any sort of medical advice. That being said, I think what happens when you stay secluded from the rest of society, especially at that time, pre-internet, when you stay at home, and you become out of touch with society. You become out of touch with people. You become out of touch with the world around you. And that's how you start to become forgetful. I think that's how, the Alzheimer's can potentially, the Alzheimer's, the memory loss can potentially start to kick in because you're out of touch with the world around you, because you're not leaving your house, you're not going to new places. So yeah, this movie definitely hits on all of those themes of surveillance, good versus evil, loneliness. This movie is definitely a cautionary tale and deserves its spot on the AFI top 100. It is hands down one of Alfred Hitchcock's greatest films, and I'm gonna go so far as to say, last thing I'll say before I get to the next segment, Psycho revolutionized the horror genre. All right, so now we are on to Psycho Plus. So, Psycho Plus. Starting off with the awards. This movie was nominated for 4 Oscars. It had a total of 8 award wins and 14 nominations from other awards ceremonies. At the 1961 Academy Awards, Janet Leigh was nominated for Best Actress in a Supporting Role. She lost to Shirley Jones in Elmer Gantry, a movie which is not on the AFI Top 100, I don't think. Alfred Hitchcock was nominated for Best Director. He lost to Billy Wilder for The Apartment, which is number 80 on the AFI Top 100, so look for that in a future episode. John L. Russell was nominated for the Oscar for Best Cinematography in Black and White. He lost to Freddie Francis for his work on Sons and Lovers. Joseph Hurley, Robert Clatworthy, and George Milo were nominated for Best Art Direction, Set Direction in Black and White. They lost to Alexander Trauner and Edward G. Boyle for their work on the aforementioned The Apartment. On to the trivia. Director Sir Alfred Hitchcock was so pleased with the score written by Bernard Herrmann, which I think is one of the best, if not the best, movie scores of all time. Respect to John Williams, respect to Ludwig Göransson, but I mean, come on, Bernard Herrmann's score, So pleased with the score written by Bernard Herrmann that he doubled the composer's salary to $34,501, which translates to about $374,691 in 2025. So, whew, man, that's a payday. That's a come up. Yep. You could tell rent was due for Bernard Herrmann when he made that score. Hitchcock later said 33% of the effect of Psycho was due to the music. Ironically, he was originally adamant that there should be no music in the shower scene, but he was persuaded by his wife to give it a try. The screeching violins and dire strings, which would inspire the music for Jaws in 1975, ending up selling the scene and driving theatrical audiences beyond anything they had ever experienced. I can only imagine what it must have been like to see that scene in the theater in 1960. That had to have been like very, very chilling. Because even for me, watching this movie 65 years later, it's still chilling. It's still scary every time I watch it. And yeah, the music definitely sells it. On the DVD of and we are going to stop and start over. Okay. Cobbs Corner, Psycho Plus, marker, and all right, take two, and action. On the DVD of Psycho, boom, right here, yeah. On the DVD that I have of Psycho, in case any of you were wondering, yes, I literally watched these movies on DVD because I live in 2005. There is a version of on the bonus material. There's a version of the shower scene without any sound, and even as I'm watching the shower scene with no sound, I'm like imagining. I can still hear the music in the back of my mind. I can still hear the like even without the sound. So yeah, the music definitely sells it. Definitely makes it work. Alfred Hitchcock, he was right on the money when he said 33% of the experience is the music itself. That is, I couldn't agree more. And I think it was Bob Lament when we did North by Northwest. He had said that Alfred Hitchcock's wife would usually have input into the movies because she was an editor. So a lot of times she would kind of have that input and be essentially an uncredited editor on a lot of his films. So she had that editor's eye. So of course, Hitchcock's wife suggesting yes, put the music in the shower scene. Don't just have it be without music. But just for the film buffs like myself, again, if you can, pretty sure you can still get your hands on a DVD copy of Psycho. I got mine at my local FYE store. Shout out to the Trumbull Mall in Trumbull, Connecticut. If you're able to get your hands on a DVD of Psycho, under the bonus material, there is a version of the shower scene. You can watch the shower scene first without the music and then with the music, just for your own comparison. But at some point I am going to watch Jaws. Jaws is on the AFI Top 100, so I will get to that movie eventually. Director Sir Alfred Hitchcock bought the rights to the novel anonymously from Robert Bloch for only $9,000, which is about $97,743 in today's money in 2025. He then bought up as many copies of the novel as he could in order to keep the ending a secret. You see, Hitchcock, he did not play around when it came to the anonymity of the ending of his movies. So him quietly, anonymously acquiring the rights to do a film adaptation of the book, and then saying like, I don't want any copies of this book to be in the world. I don't want anybody to know the ending of the film, which I mean, the twist ending of the film, again, if you haven't seen this movie yet, why are you still here? I already warned you. We're getting into spoilers. So, but yeah, he was serious. He said, I don't want nobody to know the ending, and when you come to the theater, you can only show up at the very beginning. All right? Nobody's allowed to come in halfway through. And then even after you leave, I don't want nobody to say nothing. Yeah. That's how strict he was about. We don't want no leaks. Nada. No leaks. Yep, keep the ending a secret. He was so strict about keeping the ending a secret that when the cast and crew began work on the first day, they had to raise their right hands and swear an oath not to divulge one word of the story. Alfred Hitchcock also withheld the ending part of the script from his cast until he needed to shoot it. Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock definitely would not have gotten along with Tom Holland. Yeah, because you imagine, like, if that movie were made today and if he cast Tom Holland as, I don't know, Sam, maybe? Yeah, Tom Holland would have leaked that. We all know what happened with, Tom Holland and the leaks. I mean, I think he leaked Spider-Man Far From Home, like the title for Spider-Man Far From Home or something like that. So, Marvel Studios, they're also very, very strict now about not knowing the ending. Like, I've heard that they will give cast members like everyone gets a different copy of the script. Like, I think it was like the ending of Avengers Endgame. Like, a couple of the cast members got like 5 different versions of the script. Nobody knew which one was real, and they didn't find out until the day of the shoot. So yeah. Alfred Hitchcock definitely would have been very irate if he were alive today with all of the leaks that have happened. He had, I think, the convenience of not having the internet at that time. I think with the internet today, it's just more difficult to not have leaks and to keep everything under wraps. I mean, studios try their best today, but we got the internet, we got social media. It's not going anywhere. So, but of course, this movie didn't go over well with everybody. I mean, after this movie's release, Sir Alfred Hitchcock received an angry letter from the father of a girl who refused to have a bath after seeing Diabolique. I think that's a French film, 1955, and now refused to shower after seeing this movie. Hitchcock sent a note back simply saying, "Send her to the dry cleaners." Oh man, that is savage. This dude, Alfred Hitchcock, this dude, he wasn't no punk. I'm not gonna say the next part of the word, but he was not no pushover. He said, like, hey, look, if you don't like it, turn it off. You know what I'm saying? But honestly, I'd be afraid to take a shower, like, for a while after I saw that movie. And yes, before any of you got anything to say in the comments, all right, yes, I have showered since I've seen this movie with the lights on. Yes, I've showered. Okay, since seeing this movie. Have you? Yes, I'm talking to you. Okay? Some of y'all probably listening to this episode right now. You ain't showered. You ain't brushed your teeth. You ain't washed your face. Nothing. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. Earl. Jeff. Aaron. Go. Take a shower. Right? Come on. Cleanliness is close to godliness, guys. Come on. Cobbs Corner. We out here promoting good hygiene. Alright? Who knows? Maybe this podcast will be sponsored by like Tiege Hanley or something. Walt Disney refused to allow Sir Alfred Hitchcock to film at Disneyland in the early 1960s because Hitchcock had made that disgusting movie, Psycho. Yeah, I think this movie is probably so iconic today because it was a little bit controversial at that time. And I'm noticing that same theme with a lot of the movies on this list. Didn't go over well with everybody. Yet they're classics today. So chin up, Sir Alfred Hitchcock. Chin up. Alright, we got a user review. The greatest horror film ever. When you look up the phrase horror film in the dictionary, a picture of Janet Leigh screaming in a shower should appear next to it. Undoubtedly, Psycho is the greatest horror film ever made, bar none. The story is incredible, the acting is near perfection, the cinematography is godly, the soundtrack is perfect. It's hard to find anything wrong with Psycho. Perhaps the only imperfection I can find with Psycho is the inability to stand the test of time. One of the reasons the shower scene has become so notorious is that it's not only filmed to perfection, but because the elements of sexuality and murder are so surreal. In 1960, seeing a nude woman being murdered in a shower was something that no one had experienced yet, and was quite shocking. Nowadays, seeing Jason double spearing 2 lovers having sex is nothing uncommon. I envy those who experienced Psycho in 1960 in theaters. Those experienced the full terror of Psycho. Aside from this, though, the movie is flawless. I won't even go into how incredible the cinematography is. One thing I think people seem to forget about the movie is the incredible soundtrack. Sound is such an important element in the movies, and Psycho is undaunted when it comes to sound. The only other horror movie that even comes close to using sound with such perfection is Halloween, 1978. The movie is perfectly casted as well. Janet Leigh as the beautiful Marion Crane, Vera Miles as the concerned sister, Leigh Crane, and of course the unforgettable performance from Anthony Perkins as the eerie yet charismatic Norman Bates. I would recommend this movie to any horror film fanatic. I would especially recommend this movie to any horror movie fan not desensitized by the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, or Scream. Well, not desensitized by Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, or Scream, if such a fan exists. This review was provided to us from the user named Popenoe, Popenoe, via, I guess, permalink on IMDb. This review was published on January 16th, 1999, so this review is 26 years old. Couldn't agree more. Me personally, I'm not the biggest horror movie fan, but, Psycho, this is just one of those movies that's, again, all-time classic. It really, it really sort of opened up that, ushered in, a new era of horror films and horror in cinema. And like I said, this movie kind of gave me Get Out vibes, in that the way that the family lives sort of secluded from society. So I did see a little bit of shades of Get Out in there, I guess you could say. And Get Out is one of those movies that I think created its own subgenre of social horror that we're living in now. But not sure if Jordan Peele had intentionally meant to draw inspiration, or if he even drew inspiration from Psycho, but I did just notice that sort of parallel between the family in Get Out and the Bates Motel, how it's very secluded, very cut off from the rest of society. So maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't, who knows. The movie has an IMDb rating of 8.5 out of 10 stars. I completely agree. I'm maybe with them. 8.5 out of 10. A Letterboxd score of 4.3 out of 5 stars, which is a little bit lower. From if you were to do the math, that's 4.3. That's a little bit lower than the 8.5. I think. Right. No. It's about the same. Yeah, because 8.5. Okay, well, I'm not gonna sit here and try to do mental math. Yeah, we're gonna have Math Corner. Cobbs Corner. Oh, you thought we were gonna talk about movies? No. We gotta do basic math. Okay, pen, paper, and 8.5 divided that by 2 is not doing that. The movie was released on September 8th, 1960, here in the United States. It is an American film. It is only in English. It's also known as Psychosis, Psychosis, Psychosis. I know that was the Spanish title for Psycho. Filming locations: Psycho House and Bates Motel, Backlot, Universal Studios, Universal City, California, USA. That was the exterior of the Bates Motel and the house. I think that's the lot that, if any of you watched the original theatrical version of Psycho, that was the lot that Alfred Hitchcock had walked everyone through in his trailer for Psycho. He did the walkthrough of that lot, which was the setting for the Bates Motel and of Norman Bates' house. So yes, the Psycho house and Bates Motel. Production companies were Alfred J. Hitchcock Productions and Shamley Productions. Box office: the movie had an estimated budget of $806,947, which translates to about $8.8 million in 2025. So that is considered, I want to say that's, by today's standards, that's considered low budget for a movie to be made for less than $10 million. That's considered a low budget film, for sure. Its gross domestic box office haul was $32,181,230, which translates to about $349.5 million in 2025. Its gross worldwide was $32,251,723, which is about $350.3 million in 2025. So it definitely made its budget back, and then a lot. not even and then some, because it only cost $8.8 million to make, and well, about 8.8 million by today's standards, and by today's standards it made back 350 million. So that's whew. That's a huge payday. Yep. Of course, Paramount Pictures, they was like, yeah, sure, you can have some of that merchandising, right? So we don't really care about this movie. It's not going to do well. And then all of a sudden, the box office numbers came in. It's like, oh man, we shouldn't have given them that the money from the earnings. Darn it. Rotten Tomatoes, tomato meter score 97%. Audience score 95%. Kind of with the audience on this one. Yeah, 95. Still good, but again, it's not in the top 10 on the AFI Top 100. But look at the competition. Critics' consensus: infamous for its shower scene, but immortal for its contribution to the horror genre. Because Psycho was filmed with tact, grace, and art, Hitchcock didn't just create modern horror, he validated it. Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. You can watch Psycho with a subscription on Netflix. Feel free to rent or buy it on Fandango at home, or if you are like me and you're living in 2005, you can I think it's backwards for you guys, but yes, you can watch it on DVD. Yes, watch Alfred Hitchcock Psycho on DVD, or you can watch it on Netflix for those of you here in the United States. You can also rent it online. So that is going to conclude today's review of Psycho. If you like what you heard today, don't forget to give this podcast a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Feel free to leave this podcast a written review on Apple Podcasts as well. To the YouTube audience, don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe, share it, and click that bell. Click that bell so you get notified whenever I upload these new episodes. I'm trying to pump out these episodes as quickly as I can, guys. We are so close to 100 episodes. I can almost see it. All right. If you want to stay up to date on all things Cobbs Corner, then you gotta follow me on Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, and TikTok. All that information is in the show notes below. If you made it to the end of this episode, I greatly appreciate it. Click the video on the screen right now to listen to my review of The Wizard of Oz. As always, I'll talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.